Hello and welcome. Have you ever wanted to just chat with someone in French? Maybe talk about your family or just get to know them a little bit better? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today. We're going to look at the essential building blocks to do just that. Talk about family, describe people, and of course, ask those all-important questions.
So, let's start with a goal. By the end of our time together, how would you feel answering this question? Our aim is to get you feeling confident and ready. We're going to take it nice and slow, step by step, so you can really get the hang of it. Sound good? Here's our little roadmap for today. First up, we'll learn the key words for family members. Then, we'll figure out how to say my family or your family. After that, we'll get into describing people, learn how to ask questions, and finally, we'll see how it all comes together in a real simple conversation. Okay, first things first. To talk about your family, you need the words for them, right? So let's build our foundation with some of that essential vocabulary. Let's start with the immediate family, and I'll say these slowly so you can catch the pronunciation. The father is un père, and a mother is une mère. A brother is un frère, and a sister is une sœur. For partners, a husband is un mari, and a wife is une femme. Now that word, femme, also just means woman. A son is un fils, careful with that silent L and S, and a daughter is une fille. For a more general term for a partner, you can use un conjoint or une conjointe. And finally, for the wider family, grandparents are des grands-parents, a cousin is un cousin or une cousine, and grandchildren are des petits-enfants, which literally means little children. So here we can see those words in a real sentence. Mon frère s'appelle Maxime. My brother's name is Maxime. Ma femme s'appelle Jeanette. My wife's name is Jeanette. And mes petits-enfants s'appellent Anaïs et Maxime. My grandchildren's names are Anaïs and Maxime. Now, did you notice those little words at the beginning? Ma, and mes? They all mean my. So why are there three different words? Well, that is a perfect lead-in to our next topic. All right, so now that we know who we're talking about, let's learn how to make it personal, how to show that they belong to us. This is where possessives come into play. In French, these are called possessive determiners. Now, the rule here is pretty simple, but it is so important, and it's one of the biggest differences from English. The word you choose for my or your doesn't depend on you, the speaker. It depends on the thing you are talking about. So you always have to ask yourself, is the noun I'm describing masculine, feminine, or plural? Okay, let's break down this table. It's not as complicated as it looks, I promise. For my, if the noun is masculine and singular, like père, father, you use mon, so mon père. If the noun is feminine and singular, like sœur, sister, you use ma, so ma sœur. And if the noun is plural, like enfant, children, you use mes enfants. The exact same pattern works for your, ton, ta, tes, and for his or her, son, sa, ses. Let's see it in action. C'est mon téléphone. This is my telephone. Because téléphone is a masculine word in French, we use mon. Next, ma sœur s'appelle Lise. My sister's name is Lise. Sœur is feminine, so we use ma. And check out this last one. Ce sont les filles de Marc. Ce sont ses filles. They are Marc's daughters. They are his daughters. Because filles is plural, we use ses. See, it's all about the noun that follows. Great. We can now name our family members and say they're ours. But what if we want to say a little bit more? Like what they do for a living or how old they are? Well, for that, we're going to need pronouns and a couple of really, really important verbs. So to avoid repeating names over and over, we use pronouns. Pretty simple. In French, he is il and she is elle. Now for they, you've got two choices. If the group is all male or it's a mix of males and females, you use ils. But, and this is a key difference, if the group is made up of only females, you have to use elles. Okay, now for two absolute powerhouse verbs. Être, which means to be, and avoir, to have. You'll use être for descriptions, like someone's profession. Il est étudiant. He is a student. But here's a really interesting twist. To talk about someone's age, you use avoir. So to say she is 30 years old, you actually say elle a 30 ans, which literally means she has 30 years. Looking at our table, for he is or she is, it's il est or elle est. For they are, it's ils sont or elles sont. And for he has or she has, it's il a or elle a. For they have, it's ils ont or elles ont. let's look at a perfect little example of all this working together. Vanessa est étudiante. Vanessa is a student. Elle a 3 enfants. She has 3 children. Louis et Antoine sont jumeaux. Louis and Antoine are twins. Ils ont 5 ans. They are 5 years old. Or literally, they have 5 years. See how those verbs and pronouns start to paint a much richer picture? And, since our whole theme today is family, it's pretty interesting to see how families look in the real world. Our source material points to this data from a 2011 Canadian census, which showed that almost 5% of couples at the time were mixed union couples. It's just a nice little reminder that families come in all wonderful forms. Okay, so far, everything we've done is about making statements. But a conversation is a two-way street, right? So now let's learn how to ask questions so we can get to know people even better. Let's start with the 2 most basic questions there are: who and what. In a casual, informal chat, if you're pointing to a person in a photo, you'd ask, c'est qui? Who is it? But if you're asking about an object, you'd say, qu'est-ce que c'est? What is it? It's a really simple but really crucial distinction.
Now, for questions where the answer is a simple yes or no, French actually gives you 3 main options. The easiest, most common way is just to make a statement but raise your voice at the end, making it sound like a question. Tu habites à Montréal? A slightly more standard way is to add the phrase est-ce to the very beginning. Est-ce que tu habites à Montréal? And finally, the most formal way is to flip the verb and the pronoun. Habites-tu à Montréal? All 3 mean the exact same thing. Do you live in Montreal?
Okay, this next point is really, really crucial in French culture, and that's knowing when to be formal versus informal. You use tu when you're talking to friends, family, kids, people you know well. You use vous when you're talking to strangers, older people, in a professional setting, or when you're speaking to more than one person. And this choice actually changes your possessive words too. Instead of ton, ta, tes for your, you'll use votre for singular things and vos for plural things. Getting this right is a huge sign of respect. So what if you need more than a yes or no? Well, for that, you need question words. For where, you use où. Where do you live? For how, you use comment. Comment t'appelles-tu? What is your name? Which actually means, how do you call yourself? And for what, you can use quoi. Like in, c'est quoi ton nom? What's your name?
Whew, we have covered a lot of ground. We've got vocabulary, possessives, verbs, questions. Now let's do the fun part and see how all these different pieces click together to make a real, natural conversation. Imagine a typical first meeting. One person says, Bonjour, je m'appelle Vanessa, et toi? And the other replies, Allô, moi c'est Fanny, ça me fait plaisir de te rencontrer. It's simple, it's polite, and it uses the kind of structures we've just been learning. It really goes to show you don't need a massive vocabulary to start connecting with people. And just to give you a few more tools for your kit, here are some really useful phrases. You can say enchanté if you're male, or add an extra E sound, enchanté, if you're female, to mean pleased to meet you. A more formal version is je suis heureux de vous rencontrer. And when it's time to go, a really friendly way to say goodbye is à la prochaine, which just means until next time. So, we're back where we started, with our goal. Think about a friend, a partner, a parent. How would you introduce them? You could say, c'est mon frère, il s'appelle. Or maybe, voici ma mère, elle est. The point is, you now have the tools to start building these sentences yourself. The best way to learn is to practice, so please, give it a try. Thanks so much for joining me for this, and à la prochaine.